evening, everybody. Hi. My name is Amanda Wade. For those of you that don't know me, I am the temporary licensed professional counselor here on campus. I work in the Student Success Office, which is out in the gym in Office 55. I'm here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, as well as the rest of the Student Success staff. And we offer free counseling to PCC students. So if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, feel free to come in and schedule an appointment with Pam, our assistant, or any of the representatives, or myself. I handle all kinds of mental illnesses or issues or wellness topics, predominantly with your age group. I'm going to deal with depression, anxiety, and some eating disorders, but I can talk about other things as well. So, before I introduce our guest speaker, I have a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, we're all connected to our cell phones, but I ask out of respect for our guest speaker, our topic, and those around you, that you put your phones on silent or turn them off and set them down and out of the way so they're not a distraction. Second, we handed everybody a half-sheet survey. It's really short and simple, so we're asking that you fill it out at the end of the presentation and on your way out the door and hand it back to one of our workers, peer educators, or student success help. We're very pleased to bring you tonight's presentation. The topic of suicide is not an easy one to talk about out loud. In fact, most people tend to find easier words to talk about it or ignore it altogether, which continues the mental health stigma that we have in this country. Though it's a difficult issue, it is one that needs to be talked about and touches each of us in this room in a very different way. Our speaker tonight is no stranger to PCC. Her son actually graduated in May and was a Beaver baseball player, Wyatt Akins. He was here, he was a great student. We're excited that his mom has decided that she would continue working with PCC even though he's no longer here. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in social work from K-State, her Master's of Social Work from KU. She currently holds 2 licenses within the mental health field and works in Hutchinson through Horizon Mental Health Center. She serves as the department head for clinical integration, which can oversee services at multiple locations, and also includes the prevention, education, and outreach programs. So that's why she's here tonight. She provides behavioral health consultations at the Hutchinson Clinic, but she is also a trainer for MANT, ASSIST, Suicide Talk, and Mental Health First Aid. So without further ado, please help me welcome our guest speaker, Ben Phoenix.
Okay, so I have to take that as my story, while she's sitting up there reading my slides. One day I was giving a training down in Kiowa. Does anybody know where Kiowa, Kansas is? Right? It's right on the Oklahoma border. I live in Hutchinson, so we have to get up at like, I don't know, 1 in the morning. Every time I tell the story, I have to get up earlier in the morning. We got down there, got everything all set up. 7:30 in the morning, we were ready to go. My PowerPoint was ready. At 8:30 in the morning, I got ready to start the workshop, and my PowerPoint was all in Japanese. It was in English at 7:30, it was in Japanese at 8:30. Tell me how that works. Okay. Let's have a laugh. I love it. All right. What sport are you guys? Basketball. You're basketball.
Kickball.
All right. Well, I've got my wrestlers over here. Basketball's over here. What are you guys over there? Soccer? Okay, soccer. What are you guys?
What? No team.
Basketball. Water polo. All right. Okay. Well, Pratt, like Lynn said, Pratt is kind of near and dear to my heart. Wyatt, my son, Wyatt. You can't hear me? Okay. Can I have you put that in writing so that I can send it to everybody that says, quiet it down? Because nobody ever tells me that they can't hear me. But seriously, you can't hear me? Okay, I'll talk louder. Okay. All right. You what? Hey, you know what you could do? You can show me some love and move over here. Right? You want to move over here? Come on. You can see my slides better over here too. Oh, not really yet. I'm not that bad. I'm only kind of slightly annoying. Okay, so does anybody here know Wyatt? Does anybody remember Wyatt? Charles does. I'm sorry. I'll just go ahead and apologize for all the things he did. Isn't nobody else knew Wyatt? Because I'm looking for some stories and nobody can tell me stories. Okay. So I'm down here because I hate to be up on stage. I like to be closer to the people that I'm talking to. I'm really a very, very informal speaker, if you can't tell. So if I say something that doesn't make sense, which at this time of night is a pretty good chance, I won't make sense, please stop me, slow me down, or speed me up, right? It's his job to speed me up if I'm going too slow. If I stumble over something, if I don't make sense, if you need me to clarify something, please shout it out, raise your hand, whatever you need to do to get my attention, because I'll go over it again, or try to explain it better or do something, okay? So we're here today to talk about suicide. My name is Beth Aikens. I've worked at Horizons Mental Health Center, which is the community mental health center here in this area. I've worked there for 30 years. I started working there when I was 10. Laugh. Where's my laugher? Laugh. You guys are rough. You guys are rough. Okay. Maybe you'll love me by the end of tonight. I don't know. I know. Suicide is not a very fun topic to talk about. I know that not a single one of you are really here because this is where you want to be, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you're here. For whatever reason you're here, I'm glad you're here. But I've been at Horizons for 30 years. I do a lot of trainings. Suicide is one of the things that I talk about. Do I love talking about suicide? No. Okay? But it's an important thing to talk about. And I do like to talk about it because I think you guys are important. And it's important that we spend some time talking about suicide so that people are more comfortable sharing when they're feeling suicidal or being able to listen if they have a friend who is feeling suicidal. One of the reasons I really wanted to come here to talk about suicide, I was sitting at one of the Pratt baseball games one time, and there were some people sitting behind me talking about suicide, and this girl was sharing about how many of her friends had actually attempted suicide. And it was incredible. She'd had like 4 or 5. And I was just amazed. And, she was obviously your guys' age. She was a student here. And so this is an 18, 19-year-old girl who had had 4 or 5 friends who had attempted suicide. And to me, that's just really kind of sad. Okay? The good news is that the more we're here to talk about suicide, the more you guys are comfortable talking about how you're feeling, or the more comfortable you are allowing a friend to talk about how they're feeling, the more we can hopefully keep people from actually completing suicide. Okay, so that's what we're here to talk about today. All right, so, oh, here we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to get you up and moving a little bit, because I know a bunch of you are here. It's been a long day. I know, how many of you have practice today? All right, so you're already warmed up, right? So you got some lactic acid built up, so you got to get some of this. Okay, so we're going to play my fact or fiction game. So here's the rules. I'm going to give you a statement. If you think it's fact, what are you going to do? You're going to stand up. If you think it's fiction, you can stay seated. Now, you can't just stay seated because you don't want to get up, right? You're going to stand up when you think it's fact. All right? Okay, so here it is. Fact, you stand up. Fiction, you stay seated. Okay, so here's the first one. You can't imagine a better way to spend the next 30, 45 minutes. Fact or fiction? Cannot imagine. See? You guys get extra credit points. All right. Okay, well, I know the reality is not very many of you want to be spending your Tuesday night with me talking about suicide. But I'm really glad you're here. I'm really, really glad you're here, because the more we talk about suicide, the more we can break down the stigma, and the more we can hopefully begin to decrease the numbers of people who are completing or attempting suicide. Okay, how about this? Self-harm is a failed suicide attempt. Fact or fiction? Self-harm is a failed suicide attempt. Ooh, you can go halfway, you can go somewhere in between. Self-harm. All right, okay. It's actually fiction. Somebody who's doing self-harm, typically, the intent is to harm themselves and not actually to kill themselves, okay? Most people who are self-harming are struggling with some sort of internal, emotional hurt, okay? And so really what they're wanting to do is release that emotional hurt. So they're most oftentimes not wanting to kill themselves, but they're just trying to figure out some way to get that emotional release, okay? So that is in fact fiction. All right, you guys ready? Here's the next one. Okay, how about self-harm can be a good thing? Self-harm can be a good thing. Fact or fiction? Fact or fiction? Got one standing up? Oh, okay, couple more. Got it somewhere in between? Okay. All right. Okay, it's a fact. Yeah. Okay. Self-harm can in fact be a good thing. It may actually, in some cases, stop suicide, right? It can perhaps sacrificing a part of the body to save the whole. People who self-harm often say there's a buildup of pressure. So harming can be like opening the lid of a boiling pot. Okay, releasing some of that internal stuff that's going on may actually help that person from actually going to the point of attempting or completing suicide, right? So it's kind of like that pop bottle. Have you ever had a pop bottle that you've shaken up? And what happens when you release that lid all at once? What happens? It explodes all over you, right? But if you release the lid slowly, what happens? It just kind of goes shh, right? And there's not that big explosion. So sometimes for some people, self-harm can be kind of like that slow release of that pressure. So it's in fact a fact, right? Self-harm can be a good thing. I like you. All right. Okay. How about this? If you ask a young person about his or her suicidal intentions, you will encourage the person to kill themselves. Fact or fiction? If you ask someone if they're suicidal, you will encourage them to kill themselves. If you ask somebody if they're suicidal, you will encourage them to kill themselves. All right, that's actually fiction. In fact, the opposite is true. If you ask somebody if they're suicidal, a lot of times that helps the person feel better. It helps them know that you care, gives them somebody to talk to. So asking somebody directly about their suicidal feelings will often lower their anxiety level and act as a deterrent. Your openness and concern in asking about suicide will allow the person experiencing pain to talk about their problems. This may allow the person with suicidal thoughts to feel less lonely or isolated and perhaps a bit relieved. Okay? Now, one of the questions that people often ask me about this is, what about that person that eggs somebody on? You know, they know that somebody's feeling suicidal and they say, go ahead and do it. There's a difference, okay? There's a difference between knowing that somebody is suicidal and saying, go ahead and do it, and being concerned about somebody and saying, hey, I'm concerned about you. Are you feeling suicidal? All right? So if somebody is not already feeling suicidal, asking them if they're feeling suicidal is not going to make them that way. Okay? Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. We'll talk about that more later. you doing it?
I did that.
Okay, well, I just think about it. Okay, how about this one? Suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people. Second leading cause of death in young people. And when I'm talking young people, I'm talking like ages 8 up to like 24. Everybody decided? That's a fact. In the United States in 2008, an average of one young person aged 15 to 24 died of suicide every 2 hours and 3 minutes. It's the second leading cause of death. How scary is that? What do you think the first is? Car accidents. Yeah, car accidents. It's the second leading cause of death in young people. Huh? I'm sorry. I thought you asked what the first leading cause of death was. It's car accidents, okay? It's the second leading cause of deaths in people your guys' age, okay? One person every 2 hours and 3 minutes, okay? You think about that throughout the time you were awake today and the time you were in class, how many people your age died by suicide? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. Okay, here's our next one. A young person who attempts suicide will always be suicidal. So once suicidal, always suicidal. Once suicidal, always suicidal. Okay, that's in fact fiction, okay? Oftentimes somebody who's suicidal is only going to be suicidal for a short period of time. There are some people who kind of are chronically suicidal, but most people who struggle with thoughts of suicide or feelings of being suicidal are only suicidal for a short period of time. And if we can help that person get through that dark period and that rough period, they're really going to be okay, okay? But we have to really be with that person then when they're struggling through that time. But please know that if you're feeling suicidal, or if you have a friend that's feeling suicidal, it's not going to be, most likely for most people, it's not going to be a forever thing, okay? I gotta quit turning around, I'm sorry. Usually my laptop is behind me. Okay, how about this? How about suicide happens without warning? Fact or fiction? All right, this is fiction. Studies reveal that typically there's some warning signs. Now, I know the hard part is that sometimes we don't always put 2 and 2 together until after it happens. And then we're like, oh man, I get it. Now sometimes people leave notes. Sometimes they give away their personal belongings and things that mean a lot to them. And sometimes it does kind of happen without warning, but most of the time, there are some warnings that people are struggling. And so the one thing that I tell people is if your gut feeling is saying that something's not right, if the little hairs on the back of your neck are kind of prickling and you're saying, you know what, my roommate is different, or my friend is not acting quite like they used to, or that person that sits across the cafeteria from me just is looking lost, pay attention to that. Because more often times than not, your gut little feeling is right. And we need to really pay attention to that gut little feeling and then pay attention to that person. Okay? Okay. We're almost done here. How about this? Suicide occurs across all classes of people. Yeah, you guys are right. Suicide is neither a rich man's disease nor the poor man's curse. Shows no class prejudice. Suicide is represented throughout society. It can also affect just anyone. It can affect the cheerleader, the athlete, the doctor, the honor student, the loner, the skateboarder, the unemployed, the drama student. Okay? The person that goes to church, the person that never goes to church. All right? Sometimes it affects that person that you think has it all going on. Sometimes it affects that person that you know is really struggling. Okay, so it can affect absolutely everyone. I think this is that my last one? Oh, I gave the answer to this one. When talking to a person experiencing a suicidal crisis, only someone trained in mental health can help the person through the crisis. Fact or fiction? Fiction, I know, I gave you the answer, it's fiction. Anyone can be helpful. Anyone can be helpful. So that's why it's really important that you guys are here today. Because oftentimes you're the one that's going to come across that person that's struggling way before I am. Okay, they're not going to come to me first, they're going to come to you. You're going to be the one that's going to come across that person that's struggling. You're going to be the one that the person is going to feel most comfortable approaching. So you don't have to have 2 licenses and 30 degrees worth of experience to be able to help somebody who's suicidal. Okay, now, am I going to train you to be a therapist today? In a 45-minute... I'm not in 45 minutes going to train you to be a therapist. But hopefully what I will give you today is just a little bit more confidence that if you know somebody or if you yourself are struggling with these thoughts, that you'll know where to go or you'll know how to help somebody who's struggling. So how many of you in here today are RAs? Okay. How many of you in here have the little sign on your door that says ally? Right? Okay. So these are all people that you can go to. So that's another resource. But again, just because they're RAs, just because they're people that maybe have a little more tools in their toolbox, doesn't mean that they're the only people that can help. So you guys are all very, very important people in helping us. I talk with my hands too much, and then I end up flipping slides. You guys are very, very important people when it comes to helping decrease the number of people who are completing suicide. Okay, so here's my question. Should we be talking about suicide? Yeah, we really should. And there's still a lot of people asking that question. There's people that'll say, well, the more we talk about suicide, the more people will think about suicide, and the more people will be acting about suicide and thinking that that's the thing that they should do. But I really disagree with that, because I really think that the more we talk about suicide, the more comfortable people are going to feel when they're having those thoughts, the more comfortable they're going to feel in getting help, and the more comfortable they're also going to feel in helping other people get help. So I think we should be talking about suicide. So I have a little acronym here that we're going to talk about. So we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about it. But the very first thing that we have to make sure that we're doing is spending just a little bit of time thinking about our own thoughts and beliefs about suicide. Okay? Now, suicide is tough. And when we talk about suicide, suicide comes with a lot of emotion. It comes with a lot, I've used the word a lot already today, a lot of stigma, a lot of judgment. I think we've all probably known either somebody that has either completed suicide, has attempted suicide. We've all heard about it in the media. Kate Spade, Robin Williams, I'm kind of dating myself a little bit here. But we've all at least heard of somebody famous that has completed suicide, if we don't know somebody personally that has completed suicide. So we're all affected by it, and we all have our own thoughts, opinions, judgments, and beliefs about suicide. But the one thing that we have to really make sure that we're doing is beginning to understand where our own thoughts and beliefs are. And it's okay to have our own thoughts and beliefs, but if you've got a friend that's hurting and coming to you and saying, hey, I'm hurting, I'm thinking about suicide, we need to make sure that we're owning our own thoughts and kind of becoming able to keep them to ourselves a little bit and being able to talk to our friends in a very non-judgmental way. Because if I'm coming to you and I'm saying I'm hurting and I'm thinking about suicide, the last thing I want you to do is say, that's wrong and you should never do it, right? Because you're going to just shut me down, and I'm not going to know what to do next. So we just need to think about where we're at, and it may be that suicide is absolutely not an option for you, never going to be an option. Your religion may say it's not an option, it's not okay, and that's perfectly fine. But what we need to make sure that we're doing is keeping an open mind, watching what our judgments are, so that if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need to talk, that we are shattering the secrecy of suicide and allowing that person a non-judgmental space for them to come and talk to us. All right, does that make sense? Okay, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Like I said, I've been in the field for 30 years. I'm constantly working on it. The more I talk to people, the more I hear their story, the more I hear their pain, their growth, their resiliency, their recovery, the more my thoughts and beliefs change. Okay? So it's something that you're always going to be working on throughout your whole life. All right? So we need to be shattering that secrecy. We need to be allowing people a safe place to come and talk. So let's talk about TALK. TALK is an acronym. I didn't create it. I am a LivingWorks trainer. I'm a certified LivingWorks trainer. LivingWorks created a training called ASSIST. It stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. And one of the trainings that I am trained to train, right? Whatever, thank you. I know. But it's called Suicide Talk. And Suicide Talk is an hour-and-a-half long training that I only got 45 minutes with you, so I'm giving you my condensed suicide talk. And TALK stands for, it's an acronym, and I'm going to go through this little acronym with you guys. So, the T stands for tell, okay? So tell, if you're feeling suicidal, you need to have a safe place to go tell someone, right? And if you're the person that person needs to tell, you need to be that safe person for that person to come tell. So if somebody comes to tell you that they're feeling suicidal, some of the things that we need to keep in mind is that that person may have never told anybody before that they're feeling that way. And that's a pretty tough set of words to come share with someone. Pretty tough set of emotions to say, right? Especially if they've never said it before. To come up to you and to say, hey, I'm really hurting, I'm feeling suicidal, is hard to get out. So we want to make sure if somebody comes up to us and says that we are patient, that we're non-judgmental, that we're giving them time. And oftentimes, people that are feeling suicidal are very ambivalent. They're thinking about suicide on one hand, but they're also still struggling to try and find out why they should live. Right? Okay? So there's this ambivalent. I'm thinking about dying, I'm thinking about death, I'm thinking about killing myself. But I'm really reaching for something to hold on to. There should be some reason that I want to live. And I'm needing to find that hope. Okay? So people that are struggling with feeling suicidal are sending out an invitation. If they're coming to you and telling you I'm feeling suicidal, they're sending you an invitation. Okay? They're wanting you to help them get through this. They're wanting to talk to you about it. Okay? So, if they're talking to you about it, they're giving you that information or that invitation to talk. So the A stands for ask. Okay? So they've sent out that invitation. They want you to ask. When you're approaching somebody that you think might be suicidal, now, the person that's feeling suicidal may not actually be able to come up to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about suicide. Okay? That takes a lot to be able to put those words, those thoughts, those emotions into words. But if you're getting that sense that that person is feeling hopeless, they may be struggling with what they want to do, the one thing you want to do is to ask. Okay? So the A stands for ask. Now when you ask somebody if they're suicidal, you need to ask them very concisely, very quickly, and you need to ask them very clearly. Now, the one thing that most people want to do is kind of beat around the bush. And they want to say things like, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Okay? My answer might be no. No. Because if I'm going to kill myself, it's not going to hurt. I might, pick some not going to hurt. So I might answer that question no. Okay? Or I might be in so much other pain that killing myself is, So when you ask somebody, when you think that somebody is suicidal and they've sent out this invitation and you're getting this hint from them that something's going on, you need to ask the question very clearly. So you need to say to them, are you suicidal? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Okay? Right? It becomes very clear then. And it's a tough question to ask. Now, it sounds like it's not so tough until you're in front of a person that's struggling a little bit. Okay? Now, what I typically do when I'm asking somebody, and I know it's going to be tough, I'll look at them and I'll say, you know what? I'm about to ask you a really tough question, but I'm going to ask it because I truly care about you. And I'm going to ask you right away because the answer to this question is going to make a big difference as to what we do next. And I say, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Okay? Now, if I've been with a person for 2 hours, and we've talked about the weather, and we've talked about the baseball game, and we've talked about what we're going to do over the weekend, because I'm putting off asking the hard question, right? So we've been together for 2 hours, and then I finally get up the courage and I say, okay, are you thinking about killing yourself? And they say, yes. I just wasted 2 hours when I could have been getting them some help, right? But if I ask them this right at the very beginning, I can spend 2 hours with them helping them come up with a safety plan, helping get them to the student support center so that they can get some help. So you see why it's important to ask them quickly and ask them concisely? Right? Does that make sense? Okay? Now, sometimes what happens is you ask the question and the person says no. Because sometimes they're just not really sure what your response is going to be. Because they're afraid of judgment, they're afraid that you might not really hang with them. If they say yes, they're not afraid of what you might do. So what you may need to do is kind of stick with them for a little while and then ask the question again. Okay? So you know what? I asked you this earlier and you said no. But my gut level feeling says you're not the same today as you were yesterday. So I'm going to ask you this question again, and if you tell me no again, I'll leave it alone. But are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? All right. Okay. But I do want you to know I'm here for you. Okay? All right? So, clearly and concisely and ask it right away. Don't beat around the bush. Get it done. Because if the answer is yes, then you've got some work to do. If the answer is no, then you can move on and do something different. Okay? All right. Okay? So the T stands for tell. The A stands for ask. The L stands for listen. All right? So, when somebody says that they're not doing so well, that they're thinking about suicide, they're contemplating it, the next thing we need to do is listen. We need to listen non-judgmentally. We need to listen and not to reply. And this is tough. This is really tough. Because oftentimes we think that people want us to solve their problems. And so when they're talking to us, we're kind of thinking about what we want to say back to them, right? Okay, they're telling me about what's going on, and I think I need to solve their problems, so I'm thinking about what I want to say back to them. And so we begin to not really listen to what they're saying. But instead, we just need to listen. Just listen, not to reply. We need to listen to what the person needs to say, not to what you think they might want to say, because we might get really surprised about what they've got going on or about what's bothering them. Okay, so be surprised sometimes about what they have to say. Understand that they may have never told anyone about how they're feeling, so it may take them some time to really talk about it. Oftentimes, silence can say a lot, and we need to be okay with kind of sitting in the silence and giving them just a chance to sort of process through what they're thinking, giving them just a chance to sort of put it all together and get their words together. Okay? So the listening is super important. It's hard to do, but it's really, really important. Okay? And it might take a long time to do. Sometimes listening can be done in a lot of different ways, going for a walk or a drive, going out for a Coke or a coffee, something like that. It can be really helpful when you're just trying to get people to talk. I found a lot of times if people have something to do with their hands, give them something to drink, it can really allow people to have something a little different to focus on, and can be a little less, what's the word I want to use? Intimidating. Sometimes if you're staring at them, just like this, it can be kind of difficult. But if you give a cup of coffee, a warm drink or something, it can help people feel a little bit more relaxed. Okay, so does that make sense with the L? Yeah? Am I losing you? Am I going too slow? Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, so now the K. The K, the last part, is you kind of keep folks safe. Okay? So if somebody has said to you, I'm feeling suicidal, we've listened to them, the last thing that we want to do is whatever we need to do to keep them safe. So we definitely need to stay with them. We need to stay with them as long as we need to stay with them. Now that does not mean that if somebody has said to you, I'm suicidal, that doesn't mean that you can never leave them, because that's kind of impossible, right? You guys still have to go to class. You got to go to your wrestling match, soccer girls, you guys have to go play soccer, right? But that doesn't mean if somebody lays that out on you, you can't go, whoop, go on, I'm out of here, right? So if somebody says to you, I'm suicidal, you guys have wonderful supports here. You've got Amanda and Amy, get them to them. You've got, where's our nurse? You've got a nurse back here that can be really helpful. You've got teachers, you've got Charles. You've got all sorts of people here that can help. You've got our Horizons Mental Health Center that's right here in Pratt. Does anybody know what the crisis numbers are? Did anybody pick up one of these bracelets on their way in? Whatever I got. What's the number? 1-800-730. Great. There's a 1-800 number. There was a song. Who's the guy who wrote the song and did the song? Logic did a song. You guys all know that song, right? Whatever. Down here and not up there because she doesn't want me to sing, right? Okay, so there's a 1-800 number. It's a national number. You can call that number. There's a text number, 741-741. If somebody's feeling suicidal, you can text that number. Those are 24-hour numbers. People can call those numbers anytime. Okay? Now sometimes people say, you know what? No, I'm not really feeling suicidal, but I'm not really feeling very good. So they might need more support, but not 24-hour support, right? So there's some things that you can do to help people feel safe, help them feel more hopeful. Can I help you get into some counseling? Can I help you make a phone call? Are there things that we can do? What's got you bummed out? Can we just hang out together? You can just kind of be with them. Then on the other extreme, you've got folks that are saying, I'm really thinking about suicide. I've got a plan, I've been storing pills or whatever. Those folks, you got to get them some help right away, right? Right? So, your person that has a plan that's really going the distance, you got to do a lot with them, okay? So, to keep safe is really, really important. So if you've got somebody that has said, I'm suicidal and I'm thinking about doing something, you got to get them some help. You can't leave them. If they've got the plan and they're doing something, you need to get a support network around them. Don't feel like you have to do it on your own. Get some other people to help you. Get your teammates. Get your coach. And like I said, don't do it by yourself. I'm not making you guys therapists today. I'm not nagging you into sainthood here because you've been to this one presentation. Pull in the experts to get you some support. Okay? So that's talk. Does that make sense? Tell, ask, listen, keep safe. Good? All right. So here's some folks that are at higher risk. I'm going to just blow through this really fast. You've got people who are perfectionists, folks that are gay, lesbian youth, loners, youth with low self-esteem, depressed, students in serious trouble, abused, molested, neglected, genetic predisposition, parental history of violence, substance abuse, divorce, people who exhibit bullying behavior. So these are some of your people that are at higher risk. However, in saying this, I'm going to give you a caution, and hopefully we can play this video. This is Austin Hansen. Austin Hansen is a baseball player. hopefully we can hear his story. So this is my caution story.
Before the 97-mile-per-hour fastball delivered by number 38 in Crimson.
And he struck him out looking.
Before the emergence of the Sooners closer.
Back-to-back strikeouts to finish it for Austin Hanson.
Before the confidence on display in the junior season of Oklahoma's right-handed go-to out of the pen.
Swing and a miss, strike three. What a job out of the pen by Austin Hanson.
In the spring of 2012, Austin Hanson was a 15-year-old, unable to drive himself to baseball practice. The lone freshman selected to play on the Olathe Northwest varsity team, befriended by an upperclassman by the name of Connor Taylor.
I was kind of like the lone man out, being the young guy on the team. He went out of his way to take me under his wing, gave me a ride to all the games because, of course, I couldn't drive as a freshman, and he didn't have to do that, but he did. After that year, we did everything together.
Everybody accepted Austin because everybody loved Connor.
They loved to fish together, and it's just like, it's just great.
He was like an older brother to me. He was my first person with anything.
Their attitudes are kind of both the same. I think Austin is just as giving as Connor. Austin's smile reminds me a lot of Connor, a lot.
After graduation, Connor went on to play at Coffeyville Community College, while Austin would become a standout pitcher for Olathe Northwest, landing an offer from Oklahoma. With the bond as strong as ever, Austin began his freshman year in Norman, and Connor would be one of the first to hear about each new endeavor. With opening day just a little over a week out on the night of February 8, 2016, the best friends spoke on the phone, just as they so often did. Austin hung up the phone with no inclination that in less than 24 hours he would discover it was the last conversation he and Connor would ever have.
One of my best friends, Ryan Wigmeyer, called me and was like, hey, I gotta talk to you. Connor committed suicide. And so I just couldn't believe it. He wrote a letter to his parents and then to like all of my friend group. He just kind of said there are demons inside of his head that he couldn't live with anymore. No one had any idea because he was the happiest person, always wanting to know how you were doing. But I just kind of pushed all my emotions down and didn't really deal with it how you should have.
What's hard about it is when Connor passed away, it was just the beginning of the season in February, and he's a freshman, trying to prove himself. So Austin was able to come home Friday night, got home at 12:30 in the morning, went to the funeral Saturday. Saturday, 30 minutes after the funeral, he drove back to Norman and pitched on Sunday. And he did not have any time to grieve and process it. He was just internalizing all of it.
A day after burying his best friend, Austin made his Sooner debut, throwing 2 2/3 scoreless innings, picking up his first career win over Northeastern. He would go on to make 16 more appearances for Oklahoma in his freshman season, and by February of 2017, a year after Connor's passing, Austin had earned a starting role for the Sooners. But off the baseball field, his world was beginning to unravel.
It was definitely the hardest year of my life. I really didn't deal with it the right way, so I kind of slipped into kind of a depression.
I think their relationship was probably something that maybe me and his mom didn't even know how really close they really were. Dawn and I, we were really worried about him because you could tell he was going to take some time to process and get through it. We would try and talk to him, and he was, he didn't want to talk about it. He was trying to deal with it on his own.
The first 2 years dealing with it, I kind of blamed myself, thinking that I could have stopped it. I wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't talk to any of my roommates or anything, because I just wanted to hold it in. I didn't want to put my pain on anyone else. And I think that's what Connor was doing too.
It was pretty evident that he was going through something, and we obviously could tell that there was something that was kind of in the back of his mind all the time, and it was really tough on him. And
I was just sitting in my room, not talking to anybody. It was just like, I can't live like this anymore. I can't live in this type of pain anymore. Or it's just I'm gonna end up like Connor. Sophomore year, I went up to the coaches and I was like, I could throw a perfect game in Omaha right now, and I really would not care. It's like, I just don't know what's going on in my life. Like, telling them what I was going through and all of this, and they were like, oh, hey, you don't have to hold all this in, we're all here for you. And I'm glad I did it, because I don't know if I would be here today.
it was definitely a time where we wanted to be there for him. when he finally did tell us all about it and have that release, it was really good. And I mean, since then, we've been able to be, more vocal about it and talk to him about it, and I think that's really helped him in, in that process of grieving and whatnot. So definitely the biggest step that he took for sure.
I couldn't have asked for a better support system for Austin during that initial time when we're 5 hours away and you know that he's hurting.
Austin sought help from the Psychological Resources for OU Student Athletes, otherwise known as the PRO's office, where he began counseling sessions. He wrote letters to help express his burdens. The hardest to pen was his goodbye to Connor. But slowly, he began to release all of the emotions he had bottled up for over a year. And with a new baseball season approaching this February, the junior pitcher had newfound perspective and had rediscovered his love for the game.
If there would be one bad thing that would happen, I would let that ruin the rest of my outing. Just because I had such a mental block and so much going on in my head, but this year I'm just so much more free in the head, and it's just changed my whole aspect of the game.
It's hard as a mom because when you're sitting in the stands and you hear people like yelling, throw a strike, and you're like, you have no idea what this kid is going through. I think this year has just been a huge turning point when he has finally went through the process. He's worked all the steps with the counselor.
Before all that, he kind of had like a spunk. I think he's got that back now. He's got that liveliness back to him, and he comes up with that swagger, that confidence. He's one of those guys that keeps us going. It's more the Austin Hanson that we came in with.
I'm just out here having fun because that's how Connor and I were playing high school, just have fun, and that just leads to the team success.
You can see it now where the love for the game is back. The sparkle in his eyes is just fantastic.
CT8 is written just above the brim of his crimson hat. The initials and number of his best friend inscribed on his glove. And with the gesture made by number 38 just before he takes the mound, Connor Taylor is remembered and honored. But with each grip of the baseball, with every windup and stretch, the hope is that the delivery is much more than a 97-mile-per-hour fastball. The result bigger than a strikeout. It's not just an outing for Austin Hanson. It is a message.
Since it's all right to have the lows, no matter how bad the time is, it will always get better. When I lost to Connor, didn't think it was ever going to get better. Losing your best friend, pretty much one of your brothers, but everything, it always gets better.
This affects anybody. I mean, here Austin is a student athlete at the University of Oklahoma, and people think he's got the world in his hands, and here he is struggling internally, and no one knows. And so for him, he doesn't want anybody to be stuck in that place that he was.
I'm playing for something bigger than myself, and I think that's the most important thing in baseball and in life, is doing something bigger than yourself.
I know that that's the impact that Connor made on them. And I can't ask for anything more.
So if you look at that list of people that are at high risk, you totally missed the Connors.
Here we go, play ball!
You totally missed the Connors and the Austins, right? So it's really important that you pay attention to everyone. Because like we talked about in the fact or fiction, nobody is not at risk. I know there's a double negative there, but everybody's at risk, right? You have to pay attention to your teammates. You have to pay attention to your roommate. You have to pay attention to the person that's across the room in the classroom with you, okay? Austin and Connor had friends. They were loners. They were on teams. They were athletic. They made good grades, okay? So they were not kind of the people that you stereotypically think of as somebody that would be thinking about suicide. Connor Taylor was not somebody that anybody thought would complete suicide. And yet, he completed suicide. Austin Hanson is a pitcher for Oklahoma University. He's not now he's in the minor leagues. He's not somebody that you would typically think of as somebody that would be struggling with having thoughts of suicide. Okay? So you can't just put people who are having thoughts of suicide in a nice, neat little box. Okay? They don't fit in the box. Anybody can be susceptible to having those thoughts. So we need to make sure we're paying attention to everybody. We need to be asking those questions. when we think that we've got somebody that we know that might be hurting, okay? All right, so here's some warning signs. So if you know somebody that's, obviously, this is an obvious warning sign. If somebody's making threats of suicide, if they're saying, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to hurt myself, either directly or indirectly. If somebody's making some verbal hints, such as I won't be around much longer, or it's all hopeless, there's no point anymore, that's another warning sign. Somebody who has obsessions with death, that's somebody that we ought to be paying attention to. Somebody that's struggling with depression. However, not everybody who's depressed is suicidal, and not everybody who's suicidal is depressed. So that makes it a little tough. Somebody who has an overwhelming sense of guilt, shame, or rejection. Somebody who's putting their affairs in order, for example, giving or throwing away favorite possessions or finishing up homework. And this one often kind of gives people that kind of quizzical look. What do you mean, somebody finishing up homework? A lot of times people don't want to leave things undone. So if they're thinking about completing suicide, they're going to finish everything up. They want to leave with people thinking good things about them. So if you know of somebody that like hasn't done their homework all semester long and then all of a sudden is getting everything done and turned in, think about it. Ask them, what's going on? I mean, it may be that they're just trying to get all of their homework done, but if you know that they're having some struggles, ask them what's going on. Somebody who's got sudden cheerfulness after a period of depression. And one of the things that we're looking for is kind of that rapid mood change. Somebody who's really struggled, if they have all of a sudden decided, you know what, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm out. They might be feeling kind of this sense of relief. And so this sudden mood shift and that cheerfulness, right? The warning sign. A dramatic change in personality or appearance could be one way or the other. You know, somebody who's typically, dressed to the nines, somebody who, showers 3 times a day and would never go to class without, dressed hair, all combed and dressed really well. It's all of a sudden, real disheveled and not showering and smells bad. It's something to pay attention to. Somebody who's angered easily, somebody who's really irritable, those kind of things. Somebody who's having bizarre thoughts, changes in eating or sleeping patterns. Somebody who's maybe not sleeping at all or sleeping all of the time. Your roommate that you can't get out of bed, that type of thing. Somebody who used to be an A student who now all of a sudden doesn't care and going to class, that type of thing. Lack of interest in future plans. That person that just doesn't care anymore, isn't seeing any hope for the future. Somebody who's seeking access to pills, weapons, or other means to kill themselves. So somebody who's come up with a plan and then begins to come up with those means to take care of that plan. So if they're all of a sudden gathering pills, or they're looking for a rope, or they're gathering a bunch of alcohol, any of those kind of things. Somebody who's acting recklessly or engaging in risky activities, seemingly without thinking. So that could be the person that's all of a sudden drag racing or jumping off bridges, those kind of things, that risky behavior. Somebody who's got increased alcohol or drug use. So somebody who all of a sudden is just drinking all of the time, or using drugs that, a lot of you guys are athletes, and so you take good care of your bodies. And so this is somebody who all of a sudden is not paying any attention to any of those kind of things. Somebody who's sleeping all the time or unable to sleep, somebody who's anxious or agitated. Now the tough thing about this, again, you can't put people in a nice little box. So some people may have multiple of these items, and some people who are suicidal may not have any of these. So it makes it kind of challenging. So again, if your gut feeling is saying there's something going on, make sure you ask that hard question. And what's that hard question? Are you suicidal, or are you thinking of? Good job. Okay? So, again, if you have somebody that has said, yes, I'm not doing well, and I am thinking about this. The very most important thing to do is not leave them alone, okay? Make sure you get them to help. Get them help. Make sure you get them to somebody who can help them. There's a lot of apps that you can download on your phone. They're free. They're wonderful. The Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale has like 10 questions or something. That's wonderful. So if you think you've got somebody, you can ask them these questions. Hey, answer these. And based on their answers, it'll tell you, oh, heck yeah, this person is, really in bad shape, or, oh, no, this person is not so bad. The Suicide Safe that SAMHSA puts out is another really good one. The My3 app, that second one that's listed there. If you've got somebody that has kind of struggled, this is a good one that kind of helps them with a safety plan. It can list some of their support systems and some things that can help keep them safe. So those are some good resources to have. Those of you who are RAs, these are really great resources to have available. These are some crisis numbers. We've talked about those. I also have a list out on the table of a lot of these crisis numbers. Okay, this is my last slide here. I'm going to finish up. Kevin Hines. Kevin Hines is a gentleman. Lived in San Francisco, was really, as a teenager, really struggled. One day, decided that he was just done. Decided that he was going to end his life. He was going to kill himself. Left his house, got on a bus, he was just in tears. Was really still kind of ambivalent. Decided he was going to end his life, but he said to himself, you know what? If just one person will ask me if I'm okay, I won't do this. Okay? So keep in mind, he's in San Francisco. He leaves his house. He rides on a bus all the way to the Golden Gate Bridge. Sits in the back of the bus, tears just streaming down his face, saying to himself, if just one person cares enough about me to ask me how I am, I won't do this. Gets to the end of the line where the Golden Gate Bridge is. The bus driver says, kid, you gotta get out of the bus. Tears streaming down his face, he climbs out of the bus, still saying to himself, if just one person would ask me, I won't do this. He gets up to the bridge. A lady in big white sunglasses comes up to him and he thinks, okay, this is it. I'm not gonna have to do this. This person is gonna ask me. She comes up to him, she hands him her camera and says, will you take a picture of me? So he decides that his last act is going to be a kind act. He takes a picture of her, hands her back her camera, climbs up on the bridge, and jumps off the bridge. And this is this is a real story. I'm not making this story up. Kevin survives. He's one of very few people who survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. He survived because a sea lion actually helped push him back up. He broke all of the bones in his back. He has survived to tell his story. He has done a lot of work to try and help make sure that nobody else can jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. But my challenge to you all today is to be that person that asks, are you okay? That keeps the next person from attempting suicide. You be that person that says, are you okay?